Good afternoon to all the viewers of KCGC TV. I find myself privileged standing over here. This is Gurpreet Kaur, Assistant Professor in English from Khalsa College for Women. In our today's lecture, we will be talking about verbs. Now, I would primarily be focusing on modal verbs, but I would be giving you the glimpse of all the kind of verb in the single go. So, what are verbs? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when we are talking about verbs? Now, verbs are basically those words, they are very important part of the sentence first of all. Now, verbs are those part of English sentence which tell you about the action that is being played by the subject, or we can also talk about the state of being of the subject. Now, primarily these verbs are classified into two parts, one lexical verbs and another one auxiliary verbs. Lexical verbs are those verbs which do have a meaning, as the name implicate. Lexical verbs are those which have a meaning in itself. Now, lexical verbs can be divided into two parts, one regular and another irregular verbs. For instance, regular verbs are those verbs which have similar pattern of past and past participle inflection. Now, past participle means that when it comes to, let me just give you one example, like play, played, played, they have similar pattern of inflections. Another one is call, called, called. As we can see in the past and past participle inflection of these verbs, now when they are inflected, they have ed in itself, okay. On the other hand, we have irregular kind of verbs. Basically, they do not have the same kind of pattern when they come to past and past participle inflectional, like write, written, and write, wrote, and written, like see, saw, and seen. So, their pattern of inflection vary from one kind of word to another kind of word. Like sometimes they do not even change their word form, like cut, cut, cut. Okay. So, now lexical verbs, I have briefed about regular and irregular kind of verb. Now, we will be moving onwards with the auxiliary verbs. Students sometimes call it helping verbs because they somehow help the main verb, that in another language we call lexical verbs. How do they? They basically support lexical verbs, okay. So, they can be divided into two parts, one primary auxiliaries and another we call modal auxiliaries. Now, modal auxiliaries can be subclassified into three parts. We will be covering that up in later section, but firstly I would be talking about primary auxiliaries. Now, we basically have three primary auxiliaries, one do, another one be, and third one have. Now, do is the now these, first of all we need to classify between the difference between primary and secondary, lexical and auxiliary. Now, lexical words, they do have, as I have told you earlier as well, lexical have the meaning in itself. Obviously, primary verbs, they do also have the meaning, but they do not take past participle inflection when it comes to their usage. So, auxiliaries do not take past participle inflection when it comes to the changes. So, do is generally used in present and past indefinite. Let me just give you example. Like if I am speaking in positive sentence, like he plays, and when it comes to negative kind of sentence, I would be rather using he does not play. So, in order to introduce not into your sentence, you need to use one helping verb or dummy auxiliary, or else do we call primary auxiliary. So, does here is called primary auxiliary. So, do have three kind of inflections into it. Do base form, does when it comes to using singular with singular kind of subjects, did when we are using with the past indefinite. Now, let me just give you one example of past indefinite. Like, okay, I would be following with the same example that I have given you earlier. Like he played, and if I have to speak in the negative form, I would rather be saying he did not play, because I want to say that in the past he played, he did not play. I would not be using he not played, because not would never be used alone with the main verb. Now, moving on to the section of be, I would like to clarify to all my viewers that be does not have just three auxiliaries, three forms. It has 8 forms. Like be, base form, we have in the present is, am, are. In the past we have was and were, and we also have progressive be, plus ing, being, and the third one is been. So be has 8 forms of verb, and variably it can be used with the present progressive, past progressive, and when it comes to perfect continuous tenses as well. Then we have have. Have is the base form, and when it comes to be using with the singular kind of subjects, we would be using has, and the past inflection of this word is had. So had is generally used with the past kind of sentences. Now these do, be and have, they have their own meaning. They can be used as lexical verbs as well. Let me just give you example. Like we can use I have time. Basically have here suggests that I do have, I am in possession, or I possess time, right? I have a pen, I possess pen. So basically have or has suggests that we have the possession of something. When it comes to do means performing something, okay? We can say that she is doing her work. Do plus ing here suggests that she is performing something. And now coming to the part of is, am, are or was, were, they suggest the state of being of something. We can say that she is pretty or he is intelligent. So is here suggests that state of being of somebody, right? Now we would be moving on to the part of modal auxiliaries. As I have told you earlier that modal auxiliaries can be subcategorized into 3 parts. 1. Primary modal auxiliary, or we can say central modal auxiliary. Second one that we have is marginal modal auxiliaries, and third one we have is quasi-modal auxiliaries. I would be enlightening you first of all about central modal auxiliaries. Now they are really very important. Before starting with the central modal auxiliaries, there are some distinctions between modal auxiliaries and primary auxiliaries, or per se modal auxiliaries and lexical verbs, okay? So modal auxiliaries generally are 2 tensed, they are not 3 tensed, they just have their present form, base form we can say, and their past form. Another difference that we have in the modal auxiliaries and primary auxiliaries is that they are used with the bare infinitives. Now bare infinitive is the first form of verb. I would be telling you about the central modal auxiliaries first, and then we would be discussing about the usage of it. Then the third difference that we have in front of us about modal auxiliaries is that they lack non-tensed form. Like we never have cans, or we never have progressive form of can. We do not use canning. We use only first form of verb or second, can or could, okay. So classifying these central modal auxiliaries, first of all can and could, may, might, will, would, shall and should. Now these primarily 4 modal auxiliaries are called central modal auxiliary. Then we have marginal modal auxiliaries. Marginal modal auxiliaries are those, they are quite different from central modal auxiliaries because they sometimes used infinitive with them, like ought to, used to, need and there. They do have their own meaning. Sometimes like if we are varying according to British and American English, then need, sometimes need take the inflection of do and does, and sometimes like they are both perfectly acceptable. Okay, then the third one that we have is quasi-modal auxiliaries. In quasi-modal auxiliaries we have about to, has to, have to. So we have categorized all these kind of auxiliaries. Now I would be talking about the usage of these 3. First, I would like to talk about can. Now we generally used can when we want to talk about the abilities, authority, possibility of happening something. Giving you the example of the first, ability. If I want to state my ability that I have the ability of speaking English, then I would say that I can speak English. Or somebody has the ability of running fast, then I would say that he can run fast, okay. The second one, the second use that we have is possibility of happening something. If the chances of happening something are more than 50% or 50%, we can say like I have checked my weather forecast this morning. Then I would say it can rain today because I think that there are good chances of happening something. And the third one that we have is authority. If I want to state my authority that I can kick you out of the class if you are making noise, right? So what am I doing? I am stating my authority. I am asserting my authority to somebody. Now talking about could, the past inflection of can. That means that I am talking about unreal situation, but that is in the past. Like, I could go to the party because I had time, or I could not go to the party because I did not have time. So it is in the past. We cannot do anything about that right now. Moving to the next section, that is may. Again, may is somewhat similar and somewhat dissimilar to can. First of all, talking about the possibilities, like can is used in case of possibilities, may again can be used in case of possibility or likeliness of something happening in the future. But if that likelihood is less, if the chances are less than 50%, then you would be using may. Like if you are not sure whether it would rain or not, then you would rather say that it may rain today. Because now if the listener knows that there is this huge difference between may and can, he would get that may means that there are less than 50% of chances. Then we have might. If the chances even reduce to 30% or so. Now there is no mathematics in English, of course, but like I have made this degree so that viewers can understand the difference between can and may and might, and there again we have another thing as well, that is will. In will we do have the certainty that it is 100% going to happen. Like if I am quite sure that I will meet you tomorrow, then I would say yes, I will meet you tomorrow. So there are 100% of chances. If there are lesser number of chances, then I can meet you tomorrow. And even if there are even lesser number of chances of happening that event, then I would rather say that I may meet you tomorrow. So chances, how much percent of chances are there of happening of something. Moving on to must. Now must again is another modal auxiliary that we have. In must, what we do, we put more stress on should. Now first of all, we need to understand what exactly is should and why is it used. So should is generally used when we are talking about rules and regulations or requirements of something. Like I want to put a requirement that okay, if I am the businessman and I am holding this interview, then I would be stating some kind of requirements for the candidates that would be coming to my company. Then I would say the candidate should be less than 28 years old. A candidate should possess bachelor's degree. So what am I doing here? I am stating the requirements of something. Or else if we want to put some rules and regulations in front of somebody, like you should come to the class early, you should wake up early, right? So what am I doing here? I am putting some rules and regulations, ground rules of doing something. Next we have marginal auxiliaries and usage of that. Now ought to is generally used when we are talking about obligations or your responsibility or your duty about something, like you ought to obey your parents. Then we have need and dare. Need can be used as lexical auxiliary and it can be used as modal auxiliary, like you need to work hard or you do not need to waste your time. So according to British English, you can go with you need not waste time or you do not need waste time. So what happens over there? Both are equally acceptable. You cannot say that you cannot use dummy auxiliary. You can do both these things. Now talking about quasi or semi auxiliaries, semi modal auxiliaries here. Now about to, has to and have to. We have, of course we do have more, but I would be covering these three only right now. Now we generally use about to when we are talking about the something is going to happen quite sooner. So like I am about to do something, she is about to buy a car. About to means that this thing is going to happen soon. Then we have has to, have to and its past inflection as well, had to. When we say that something is compulsory for somebody to do, like you have to be on time if you want to attend the class. Have to means it is compulsory, it is mandatory for the other person to do something. If we are stating the same thing into the past, then she had to be on time if she wanted to attend her class. So I think I do have covered everything. Thank you for watching me.